Alrighty, perfect. So this is one of our latest iterations of the podcast we've been hosting with the club. And today we're deep diving into the wonderful, exciting world of ergonomics, which there's a bigger point at play because we're working from home. So something we don't usually consider is the working from home ergonomics standpoint that we're all working with. So we have two experts today. We have Christer and we have Anders. The best part is we span the globe for these experts. So Christer, if you could tell us more about what you do and your background, and then we could throw the ball over to Anders.
I certainly can. Thank you, Nick. So my name is Christer Olsson, and I'm assuming at this point your audience has already picked up that my accent is not from Long Island, where I reside and work. Rather, I'm Swedish, and I work in the ergonomics industry for the past 20 years here in the New York area. And I am the operations manager for an ergonomic consulting firm called Ergonomic Technologies Corp. And we provide workplace evaluations as one of our services, whether it's in the industry or in the office environment. And to your point, typically the office environment presents some ergonomic challenges. Us as human beings, we're not well equipped to be sitting in an office chair and doing work in front of a computer. There's a number of issues to it, primarily static posture of sitting still in one position. We are built to be dynamic, to be in motion. Evolution-wise, we are designed to be walking around in the woods and hunting for our food, which is quite different from sitting in front of a computer.
Sure.
So that's you had mentioned that nowadays we're not even working in the office environments of a traditional office building where at least most of us or some of us have some equipment that is adjustable and flexible, allowing us some dynamic movement during the day. Rather now we're working at home, sitting in a suboptimal work environment, if any, and for probably just a brief amount of time before the wife needs to borrow the workspace or the kids need to do homework or you need to go take care of a pet situation or something else. And on top of that, we're working much longer hours because we have nothing else to do and tend to sit in front of the computer eating our lunch. And the ergonomics related issues with all this is having a much bigger impact than it actually did before when we were working in an office environment where you tend to have to get up and go to meetings and be much more dynamic than we are currently.
Yeah, so I think that's a great summation, and we've yet to even peel back the layers on what has been happening over the last year, what you guys have been doing for years, and what we have to look forward to in the future on I hate saying it, the new normal. But Anders, you've got quite an interesting product and interesting solutions. And as Christer has suggested with his own accent, I've got a feeling you've got one too.
I've got an accent too, and it's not the British or the US, it's the Swedish.
Nice.
Not as bad as a Swedish chef though from the Muppet Show, but still. I'm based in Stockholm actually, so as Mousetrapper are, I'm the CEO of Mousetrapper and has been for the latest 3 years. Mousetrapper though is, we've been around since 1995, manufacturing ergonomic mice and then specifically central pointing mice. And that is basically a mouse that allows you to sit with your hands in front of the body instead of reaching out for something. Mm-hmm. So you have the mouse in front of the keyboard. So we've been doing this for quite a while and have a number of models and seeing the ergonomic challenges not change so much over the years, I think. Basically the same. They are different now though, and they have increased with the working from home as we're talking about today. We have some products addressing that. that fits in well. They were not intended for the pandemic because as many other, we didn't know about it. But we did a survey actually in December, a statistical study that showed that 20% of the workforce in Sweden got some kind of problem, RSI related, repetitive strain related injury, just the months from March to December when they were working from home. So of the about 50% of the workforce in Sweden who moved to their home office, they contracted some kind of pain or issue just during those few months. So what we're talking about today is, a common and a very serious problem that will grow even more serious if you don't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting is that there's such small incremental, almost micro injuries that happen every day that I think of like Warren Buffett when he talks about the magic of compounding interest when earning money, for example. Money makes money on top of the money over the years. It ends up being a great increase versus what we're talking about here, which RSI over time. You think that reaching for your mouse just 2 inches too far is not a big deal. However, that's almost the crux of the entire argument.
Yeah.
And,
And also another reflection I made when I joined the industry, I have a background in software industry, is that when I was about, 20-ish, 25 something, I got what we call in Sweden directly translated a mouse arm, and hence, Mousetrapper as well, the weird name.
Yeah.
That also comes from how our first Mousetrapper was designed, trapping the mouse in a holder. But I got a mouse arm or a tennis elbow or whatever to call it. I went to an osteopath who helped me. I think it's osteopath, is that correct? Or chiropractor? I don't know.
They both kind of work in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. And I got help, and I shifted to the left arm to use them with the mouse. And even today, almost 30 years later, when I start using a traditional mouse with my right hand, it takes about a week and the issue comes back. So the body has a memory as well from these kind of, RSI injuries, if we should call them injuries.
Sure. I think
which is interesting.
Injuries is absolutely accurate. And it's fascinating. You mentioned, from tennis elbow to mouse elbow or mouse wrist. A long, long time ago, at one point in time, we were all kids playing on the playground or on the field in some way. Maybe some of us were even athletes. And then as the circle of life changes, we sometimes usually end up in an office. And now you get this active being moving in 4 dimensions, and we become almost 2-dimensional in what we do. And I want to go back to Christer, because sometimes we forget the common knowledge, or what I like to say common sense, which is not very common at all, of what we do every day in the office space that actually ends up being terrible. And real quick, Anders, what you're talking about with the centralized mouse, last week, someone's like, well, I put the mouse over there so I have more space. And I'm like, yeah, but you're reaching for it. And that was like, no idea. They had no idea. Or this screen, that if someone has an L-shaped desk and they'll put the screen in the corner because they think they want to maximize both sides of their tables, but they don't realize that they're now kind of messing up their seating and the way they're keyboarding and mousing. So again, for us 3, maybe that's common sense. But Christer, if you could talk about some of the things that you've noticed that kind of go above most people's heads.
Yeah, no, exactly like you introduced it, having been in this industry for a while, to an industrial application where somebody is lifting, sacks of rice that weigh 100 pounds, it's pretty clear that that's going to run down your body. You feel the aches and pains immediately when you're doing that kind of work if you're not used to it. While sitting in an office, most people, they cannot relate, especially if you don't have any issues or any discomforts. To the fact that this can actually lead to discomfort. I'm sitting on a chair and I'm typing on a keyboard. and I'm pressing the key and it takes a microgram of force to press it, how can that lead to a discomfort? And that's exactly how it happens, like you said with Warren Buffett, just the other way around. Incremental steps that are slowly but surely tearing down your body. And that example of typing on the keyboard, for example, our hands are not well equipped to be doing that kind of motion, to do repetitive work with the fingers.
Sure.
The hand is a very complicated part of the body in the sense that there are 3 different joints in each finger are controlled by different nerves, and that cluster of nerves combine in the middle of your wrist. And when you overuse it, a repetitive or repetitive strain injury can happen, known as carpal tunnel syndrome, which a lot of people have heard about, but have no idea what it is.
Right.
And these are the kind of things that happen over time. And by the time that they happen, to Anders's point, it's way too late to do anything about it. That muscle memory is now stuck in your body. You can go to a hand surgeon and they can scrape out the inflammation and the swelling in your wrist.
Oh.
And then you go back and you make no changes to your workstation. The swelling is going to occur again. And then you go back to the hand surgeon and it's a good recurring revenue stream for him. Maybe not so ideal for the wrist, right?
Right.
We only sell once. That's our problem.
Exactly.
Know, it's interesting, like the hand and the wrist, it's such an underrated, this is going to sound ridiculous, an underrated part of our body. It's involved in everything. And the only reason why I say that is for those who have been lucky enough to get some kind of massage, the minute that the therapist gets the hand and just squeezes and that feels heavenly. Can you imagine these tools that we use every day in every different way don't get the proper care because they're constantly in motion.
And that's right. And you don't really understand how important that hand is until it doesn't function the way that you want it to do. When you can't pick up a pen and write anymore, when you can't open the doorknob, when you can't pick up the spoon to stir the food that you're cooking, it becomes very complicated.
Yeah, and you also touched on something else, which I thought was interesting. Enders brings forth solutions for the office space and the working from home. So here we have a tech avenue with products and solutions. I'm on the fitness side, and I'll get to that in a second. And then we have, Christer, you have a full-blown analysis from head to toe from an ergonomic standpoint, whether it's office or industrial, which we haven't really spoken about. But also, aside from that, there's also just the ergonomics of life. So you could talk about picking up a sack of rice working in an industry, or picking up cinder blocks if you're working on a construction site. A lot of people might have kids, and they're picking up their kids, and they're holding a kid while doing, the ergonomics spectrum is so wide, but we all always think of it in the capacity of the office. So,
and may I interrupt there for just a reflection there? I think what is important to realize is that what makes it, the problem is when we don't have any variations. If you do the cinder blocks or the rice bags or the kids or lift heavy, that's fine as long as you do something different in between. And that goes for the office as well. The bad thing is to sit in the same position, doing the same repetitive movement all time, all day long. And that is causing the problem. So the variation is what we need.
That's a great
in the office as well as in the home office. And that goes with the wellness and the fitness thing. We need the exercise, the movement, the sitting down, everything mixed.
And I think that's a tremendous point, Andrews. Thank you for pointing that out. It's kind of a microcosm of a lot of things. Whether your diet has to be varied, your emotions have to be varied. Hell, our emotions and our opinions should be varied as well, right? Too much of one thing is never a good thing. So I think the repetitive in the RSI is really the key to everything. And you nailed it with that. I totally should have picked up on that.
And it's also the risk factors that are stacked on top of each other. It's not a straight line curve. When you add all these risk factors together, that being, for example, the example I gave before of typing on the keyboard, pressing a key, nobody could possibly get injured by that.
Yeah.
But doing it 10,000 times in a day And now doing it in an awkward position, for example, if you start bending your wrist, just bending the wrist about 20 degrees, now the amount of force that has to be absorbed by your wrist increases, doubles.
Sure.
You bend the wrist further, and you know, I'm sure that a lot of people in the audience that are listening to this working from home are sitting there and looking at their wrist right now,
like,
thinking, oh, I'm bending mine that way. And then if you stack these, then the curve is exponential.
Yeah.
To your point with nutrition and the stress is one of the biggest factors. And that is one that is very prevalent at the moment with working from home. Not only do you have to complete your work on top of taking care of your kids and, you know, somebody, the pets is barking in the background, that stress adds on top of it. And that's when something breaks down and snaps in your
This is why
that's you know, an acute injury that happens. But what built up to it is the months and weeks of sitting in a position that wasn't ideal. Up to that point.
This is why I love this dialogue. I was just going to say, you guys both have your specialties, but you both obviously are bringing the other components into it. Now you're talking about stress management. You know, ergonomics is your thing. We're not necessarily, you're not there necessarily to take an audit of their stress levels, but that's part of the stew. You know, if their stress levels are high, their shoulders start to creep up a little bit. Everything else can go out of whack. So, and Anders and Christer, you guys could open up about this. Basically, Anders's side of the business, let's call it, is designing and finding solutions. So Anders, I'm assuming that you, maybe within your organization, or maybe you're looking externally to a guy like Christer, you're designing everything based on the science and the research from an individual or a professional like Christer, right? I'm guessing you guys work hand in glove.
I will. The story of how this product originally came had nothing to do with ergonomics, actually, funny enough. So, I mean, yes, we do like what you're saying. We talk to professionals, but Rolf, who founded the company and made the first Mousetrapper that looked like it was a simple metal rod connected to a Microsoft mouse. So when you move the rod, that turned the kind of the ball underneath the mouse.
Yeah.
He was an engineer at Ericsson. And when the mouse came, he hated the mouse because it slowed him down. He had to reach for it. And that took, you know, a second or two. So he thought that, wow, I'm going to work so much faster by having the mouse in front of the keyboard, not having to reach for it. So he invented this original Mousetrapper. There are pictures of it on our website, but just to work faster.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with ergonomics. And then the first sales guy, he took that, jumped into his Volvo and drove, you know, thousands and thousands of kilometers trying to sell this until he stepped in front of the HR manager at the Swedish national TV, who said, "You solved the problem of the mouse arm." And then, aha, we're into ergonomics now.
Right.
And that's how it started. So it had as many great ideas, had nothing to do with what it became. But yes, nowadays we of course work with people like Christer, physiotherapists, ergonomists, and our customer base to kind of improve the concept of central mousing.
Okay.
To have good support for the palms, designing the buttons, the force of the buttons, you know, the small tiny details. But the basic concept, which was the first central mouse in the world, was, you know, just by accident, because a nerdy engineer at Ericsson wanted to work faster.
You know,
so
it usually happens like that, right?
Yeah.
One thing ticked you off enough to design a solution and it snowballs. You know what? We've been talking about the product or products. What I want to do, and I'm sure I'll be very clunky in how I maneuver my sharing of the screen, but I want to go to it. There's a 45-second sizzle video, about 45 seconds about Mousetrapper. We'll have Christer talk about it actually as a third party. And then Anders, you could kind of expand on it. And then there's also a PDF that you guys shared with me, which I thought was fascinating because there's some statistics there that are always good to know. And then we'll dig into that. So bear with me as I figure out the nuances of the video settings here. I'll have to share screen. Okay, I think I'll share screen.
I'm not sure what video it is that you're sharing, but I can start talking about it a little bit as you're pulling up the video, just to tie back to what Andrews just said about the productivity.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we
Sure
can.
All right, are you ready? I'm gonna press play. This is my first time being a video producer. All right, you ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Using a traditional mouse can subject
Ah,
you to strain
with French subtitles.
from an ergonomic angle.
Yeah, that's unique.
That allows you to keep your wrist straight. When reaching and clicking the mouse, it can create stress in the elbow. Mousetrapper's unique solution allows you to vary usage between the different fingers and your left and right hand, minimizing the static load. Keeping your arm angled outwards and without support places unnecessary strain on the arm and shoulder. To minimize the risk of injury, the hands should be positioned centrally and close to the body. With a Mousetrapper, you'll never need to reach for the mouse. Mousetrapper, the wellness mouse.
Yeah, so sorry, Nick, I didn't want to speak over the narration.
No. First off, kudos to the voiceover. To me, I feel like I'm going on the internet.
Single mouse, a vertical mouse,
Uh-oh.
space mouse.
Is that still going on?
Yeah, I think YouTube started up a new video there for you.
All right.
Yeah, you need to stop it. There.
We almost did a seamless video, but anyway.
Yeah. It's good enough.
No, the discussion has made me think of two things. The first one is the Mousetrapper. Obviously, the main goal is to put your arms in a centralized position so you're not overreaching to get to a traditional mouse placement. But it does much more than that. With the overall setup that you're looking for in an office environment, you want to sit back in your chair and take full advantage of the seat back to restore the curvature of your spine. And one of the benefits the Mousetrapper offers is allowing you to sit back and move everything closer to you as you're sitting there. So all the other pieces of equipment that you have in your work environment is now working better for you as well. So it's not only the overreaching, so it solves problems far beyond just the mouse arm.
Yeah.
And if I may add a small thing there also, what if you have a traditional mouse, you use the same finger all the time, clicking.
Yeah.
Even if you place that in front of you and have it like at your stomach, you will always use the same. With our devices, you can change the functionalities of the buttons, so you can vary what buttons and fingers you use, and you have a set of buttons within comfortable reach. So you can, use index finger, thumb, several fingers, and vary your use of the fingers and hand.
Interesting.
Yeah, and also vary between your right and your left hand.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true too.
In your youth, when your elbow was hurting, now you could start using your left hand instead.
It's funny you say that, Christer, is where you could sit back and honestly give an honest ergonomic audit of your seating as you kind of work and you reimagine yourself with your workstation. I thought one thing that was interesting to remember, and I think as ergonomic specialists like yourself and myself, is that part of it, a huge part of it, is reminding them about behavior change. Because when I have no problem saying I have the Mousetrapper Alpha, which is amazing. I realized I sat back, Christer, and I let kind of the laptop riser work in my advantage. I really love the centralized product. I caught myself doing this because I was just, and some of it was, some of the work I was working on was attention to detail. So a lot of it was, okay, go back in your mind, relax, drop your shoulders. So a lot of his behavior change. Because when I think about office ergonomics, sometimes people in the office who are procuring the items get a bit nervous. Oh, we're gonna have to buy everyone a new chair and everyone a new Mousetrapper. Those tools are there to be used, but also you have to remember to use them properly and to use the things that are in the office properly. So.
And I think also when you talk about the procurement side, because we are also aware that our items are, compared to a traditional mouse, expensive. it's a big investment compared to like a $5 cheap mouse.
Sure.
But you have to bear in mind the cost of someone having to go to the osteopath or the physiotherapist or whatever, or if you are in pain, you don't work as effectively as if you are in a good mood and don't have pain. And maybe you even go to sick leave. There are studies done in the UK, the NHS as it's called in the UK, and I don't remember the amounts, but it's tremendous big amounts of money spent just on people from, office injuries, so to say,
Yes.
spending time at home on sick leave.
Yeah. And even
So of course,
no, sorry, go ahead.
no, so you need to kind of put things in perspective.
Yeah.
It is not a cost, it's an investment in your staff and the well-being and the wellness of your staff.
Absolutely. And there's, just as you're saying, sick leave and injuries, there's also the absenteeism, presenteeism, even when you're there and you're grinding it out because you're not feeling into it or whatever. And then, with that comes stress. With stress comes maybe errors. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, and I'm not going to get into the politics of climate change, but small incremental improvements. We might not feel and see that next year, but it's inevitable. You have to do something now to avoid the bigger issue down the road. We're going to do the sharing of the screen one more time. This time it's the PDF. So let's see if I could pull up, and you guys could tell me if we, all right. So I'm going to scroll down using my Mousetrapper. Recent content by Mousetrapper. Okay, but let's go to the second page. There we go. I thought these bits of information were fascinating, and it was apparently shared for International RSI Awareness Day, which I'll have to figure out when that is. There's a day for everything. International
28th of February.
Oh, interesting. All right, so let's go through these. The work from home has contributed to 340,000 mouse arms during the pandemic. I mean, and
in Sweden only.
And I love that you have the report as well. What did you say, Anders? I missed it.
It's in Sweden only.
Wow. So, I mean, the result is really exponential.
Yeah. And you can say, to put that in perspective, it's a population of 10 million in Sweden.
Wow.
US 280, 300.
Yeah. Now, the second, if we go to the top row central slide, to me, that's the biggest common sense thing I always share with people when I work with them ergonomically. And it's never the norm. The work zone, right, which is that small pie in front of you, and the screen in front of you. Christer, tell me how many times you actually see someone abiding by this work in the zone concept.
No, it's interesting because you have used the word common sense twice so far in this presentation, and that's how most people look at an office environment. But from my perspective, being a person that goes in and looks at how people actually work, and I challenge anyone who's listening to this presentation to go out and look at their colleague, to the left or the right, wherever they want to, and just review how they're sitting and how they're reaching and why they're doing it. There's no ergonomic solution that is only intended to benefit the posture that you're sitting in. We always have to consider the productivity of things, just like the Mousetrapper was developed to be a productivity tool rather than an ergonomic tool. By placing things closer to you and in the work zone, that allows you to do work faster, but it also decreases the pretendism and the people getting hurt and not being as productive at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many times I walk into an office, and to your point, they have an L-shaped desk and the computer is set up in the corner. As a matter of fact, I have a client whose every single workstation is like that, and there's 1,000 employees in this building. And every time I go in, I ask them, why are you sitting and working in the corner? I don't know, the computer was here when I started. And then, we moved them into a position and I'm like, oh, that feels so much better. And it's just,
It would,
You have a role to do when you're working in the office. You go down, you sit in your chair, and you start doing it. You don't think about your posture and your setup. But if you spend a minute before you get started every morning, it will allow you to do a lot more that day.
it just dawned on me. And again, being a former athlete, I commonly make the comparisons in this regard, but every fitness team has an athletic trainer to respond to injuries or help prepare the athlete for the competition. And yet, and I could be wrong, I'm assuming that many corporations that are involved with the real estate and the logistics and the planning probably don't have a certified ergonomist there on site all the time. And it kind of feels like, well, would you run a soccer team without a trainer? You probably wouldn't do that. So we almost need to reimagine again, how are we thinking of office care and employees, and what does that mean as far as support staff? So there's a huge case to be made for.
I think it's a very good way to put it in. I mean, it's like I've been in sales all my life, and typically all through all my career, people are talking about, well, if you never educate or train in selling, I mean, imagine a soccer team not having a trainer, not training before the game. It's like, you're talking about that, but putting that into ergonomics, I think it's a brilliant, why don't you have someone? Why don't you do an audit regularly? Why don't you check up? Because it takes so little time. I mean, for Christer to walk through an office and point to certain things, it is not much time. It's not much cost, and it brings so much value and benefit to the employees.
Yeah.
These small things.
My brother's a physical therapist. I don't know if I told you this to you guys. And generally speaking, physical therapists now they're commonly accepted, but because a lot of the therapy after an injury is small and subtle, it's like, oh, I don't want to go to therapy. It reminds me a lot of ergonomics, and the same field kind of translates back and forth. Let's go to these other two that I find compelling. There's 1 in 3 women have experienced pain, which is one big stat. That's obviously 33%. And then 590,000 young people have experienced pain. Now, Anders, remind me, this is still both.
All these numbers. So all the numbers here is we did a study. We've done 2 studies actually. We did it first 2.5 years ago, and then we made a repeat study in December as a follow-up on the pandemic. And it's done. It's a statistically correct study done in Sweden. It's about 1,000 respondents being phone interviewed. Okay. Swedish population is 10 million. So all these numbers are based on the approximate workforce and the percentage of the respondents, what they answered. And we saw that women has a much or a bigger percentage that gets some kind of RSI related problem. We saw also that close to 50% already in the age group 18 to 29 had some kind of problem.
That's staggering.
Yeah, so both of these studies are available through our website, with the details in them. And only, I think, 25 or between 25 and 30% of the respondents had sought any kind of help for their problems. Right. So this is also something we want people to be aware about, that there are things for you that are easy to reach for: a mouse, a new desk, a chair, or just get up and walk around your office once every hour. Kind of small things that are easy to fix your problems, but maybe you need to ask for help with your problem.
Yep, I'm going to stop the share there. There we go. We're back to the big boys. And this goes back to maybe, Christer, what you have to deal with is people are hesitant to ask for help because usually they don't understand where it's coming from, and they're more likely to blame it on a bad night's sleep or something common that is just easier to blame it on versus the small things they're doing every single day. And I don't know if people are hesitant to ask their their direct reports, their HR. I don't know if that's another layer of ergonomics, but have you encountered any of this, you guys?
Yeah, I think every person is different, right? There's a certain amount of the population are quite the opposite. They don't mind asking at all. They ask maybe too much,
Right.
complaining about something, and others sit there in pain and do nothing about it. It has been interesting, though, during this work from home. A lot of organizations have moved into providing accommodations for their employees. There are certain states where accommodations are mandatory. However, now when we were forced to work from home, essentially the organization gave you a laptop and said, good luck. I expect you to do the same from home that you did in the office. And obviously the laptop was never designed to be used 8 hours a day, and particularly not designed to be used 10 hours or 12 hours a day.
And not in the couch.
No, sitting on the couch, and either the keyboard is presented at the right height or the monitor. You can't do both.
And the elephant in the room, also your phone. People are working off of their phone.
That's right. And Anders was mentioning that we're starting to see some of these traumas in younger and younger populations. As a matter of fact, we're starting to see issues with the thumbs. They call it a BlackBerry thumb based on a previous device that was common in the world. But that's obviously something that's coming to the school children age kids. And those issues are going to follow them into their careers. And one day organizations are going to have to absorb the costs associated with people coming in with pre-existing conditions.
So what I want to do is close this up with some takeaways so people can leave with some, okay, these are things I should live by or things I might look into. Anders, to you, maybe like, what is it that you try to practice throughout the day from an ergonomic standpoint? And then we'll go to Christer, maybe the biggest things you see and how we could maybe avoid them for the future.
I think even though I work for a company selling things, I think the most important thing is not to buy something. I think it's to vary what you do and try to do some kind of exercise. I'm dipping down here now. For example, in my home office where I am now, I have this here.
Nice.
Next to me. So, and now and then during the day, I reach for it and do some kind of exercise for my shoulders, my arms, or something.
Sure.
And I think this is real. Take a walk in the morning, get up from your couch if the couch is the only thing you have, move around. There are easy exercises. You can go to our website and you can find exercises and examples, and I'm sure you provide that to your staff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most important thing I want someone to take away from this conversation. And then, of course, if you want to enhance your equipment, I think the laptop stand really to get your screen up, and then use an external keyboard and mouse instead of the keyboard on the laptop, of course, since you're rising that up.
Yep. No,
that's the most important things
I like those.
I would kind of give away. Yeah.
I was going to say on the back end, when this is posted, if you could also chime in with comments and all the content and resources you could provide, that would be great. When we get off, I'll try to add as much in the intro of the video, but also please, once we publish this, please add as much direction where we can find all the information for Mousetrapper, because clearly it's, having used it, and we were talking before offline, there's definitely a different look and feel to the quality of the product, and kudos to the people in Sweden who designed it and then produced it. And you guys should be proud of that. I think it's a fantastic product. Christer, I want you to talk to the basic office person and for the little injuries that they have, how to avoid them, maybe some stretches. But one thing you're going to have to do is avoid what Anders said with getting up and moving around, because he already took that one.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of slogans that are used quite frequently in our industry at the moment. And I think by saying that, maybe they will stick in the mind of some of the people listening to this webinar. One is that there is no perfect posture. Your next posture is your best posture, meaning the more often you can change your posture, the better off you are. A lot of people, when I come in, they want me to adjust their workstation and tell them this is how you're supposed to sit and work. That's not how it works. What makes a product ergonomic is the ability for the product to adjust to your needs. And your needs are to be ever changing. So the more the product have the ability to change with you, the better off you are. What makes a chair ergonomic is the ability for you to move in it and sit in multiple different postures. There are some that are better for you. There are some that have biomechanical advantages. It's a little too short of a webinar to go over all of those at the moment, but the most important thing is that you change that as often as you can. And to that point, we have something called the 20-20-20 rule, that every 20 minutes, you should try to get up and move for at least 20 seconds.
We should have gotten up once in this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm starting to feel stiff over here.
I am
But
too, actually.
I'm standing up working. I'm standing up.
Again.
Yeah. And then the last one, which is a little apropos the current environment, it is to social distance your laptop.
Oh.
The laptop is not intended to be used for a prolonged period of time. So the more you can add gadgets to it, have an external keyboard, put your laptop at the proper height. If you start there, presenting it where you can have your neck and your back in a proper posture in the chair that you're sitting in. That's it.
I joke around that, the evolution of man. I don't know if you've ever seen that image where you see kind of hunched and then we're upright. I think we're going right back down to it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. The gadgets are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah. Ergonomics is not considered too much in that.
No, but listen, you guys have brought about a lot of good points. I hate to say it a third time, but there is a common sense component to it. And on a greater level, it's move, right? Move, because we're functional beings. We're not stagnant beings. And I think this past year taught us that even more so. And we're social beings.
We are.
I'm fascinated, and I think there's a lot of value to connecting on Zoom and all the other video conference tools that we've been able to expand on. At the end of the day, though, there is a component to living life as it once was as well. So as we put all these amalgamated points together, I think we'll find a solution. I look forward to getting this video out there, getting both of your information out there as much or as many resources as possible. And I thank you guys for contributing and being on today, especially since Anders is already basically at the closing bell, right?
It's 10 to 5 over here, and it's still light. It's a midnight sun getting closer here in Sweden. So the evenings are getting lighter and lighter and lighter here. That's a charm of being up north.
I was going to say one parting shot, and this has nothing to do with ergonomics. I once ran a marathon in Alaska in June, and they called it the Marathon of the Midnight Sun. So it was a fascinating landscape to be in at that time. So it's cool. I enjoy sunlight. So.
I bet.
All right,
but it's dark in the winter, on the other hand.
Oh, I don't. That's when you come to the States and vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, thank you guys. Looking forward to doing more in the future. In the meantime,
thank you, Nick.
We will put this out there, and I look forward to partnering again in the future.
Yeah,
all right, guys.
it was a pleasure and a nice discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.